Hi, my name is Leela Srinivasan and I'm Director of Marketing for LinkedIn Talent Solutions. I'm really excited to be here today to share some thoughts on mobile recruiting essentials, what we see going on in the candidate world, as well as what that means for you as a recruiting professional, recruiting leader. You'll see my Twitter handle there on screen. Feel free to indulge in banter with me if you like. So before we dive into a little bit more thought on the world of mobile recruitment, let me just share a few quick facts about LinkedIn. We are the world's largest online professional network. We now have over 277 million members, and that's the number as of the end of last year. This slide actually is outdated every second of every day, as you can imagine. We're still adding about 2 new members per second globally. And in particular, on screen there, you see that the UK, we have 13 million members. That was as of the end of the year. We actually now are up to 15 million members. We just announced that this week. So great to have such a strong presence in the UK. Also on slide worth noting is the fact that students and recent college graduates are among our fastest growing demographics on LinkedIn. We have 30 million of those worldwide, and that number continues to shift upwards. So definitely a great place to look for people, but perhaps not something that you've connected with mobile strategy so far. We'll get into that in a minute. Four sort of sources of insight that I've woven into today's presentation about mobile. So first off, I'll be able to share a couple of trends about what we're seeing traffic-wise on LinkedIn.com. And of course, given the fact that we are a very large professional network where people come to manage their careers and think about professional life, those have implications for the way you recruit. Secondly, we ran some special candidate research in the tail end of last year in both the UK and the US, and have some thoughts there around what candidates are looking for in a mobile recruiting experience. Third, every year we run a global recruiting trend survey, and last year we ran that in, there were 3,000 plus responses in the US and I think the UK also. And so you'll see that basically we've learned a lot about what recruiting professionals are thinking when it comes to mobile recruiting. And then the last piece there is that we're very fortunate to work with some of the world's most progressive talent acquisition organizations. And so within this presentation, you'll see a little bit about how they're thinking about bringing mobile strategies into the world of recruitment. All right, so those are the resources that I've drawn from for this presentation. The first thing to let you know, if you weren't already aware, mobile recruiting definitely on. So from the survey that we conducted among candidates and professionals last year, we asked them how they interacted with career opportunities on mobile device. And you'll see here the split between passive and active candidates. So passive, those who aren't actually out there looking for work, but might be interested if approached with the right opportunity. And then the active candidates who are out there looking for their next gig. And so not that surprising that you see active candidates are slightly ahead of passive candidates in every category. But I think what you will find interesting is just the sheer percentage of professionals who are doing these different activities to manage their careers and think about career opportunities on mobile device. And for the purposes of this survey, we looked at both smartphones and tablets and rolled those up into these responses. So first of all, you can see top answer of anything at all there is viewing careers in inbox. And so I think something that sometimes escapes talent acquisition professionals is that the very first point of contact, that outreach to a candidate, is being read on a mobile device more often than not. And so that has implications for the messaging that you use in that in-mail or that email. And we'll talk about that a little later in the presentation. So you see here from left to right, visiting company career sites, something that's very common for both passive and active candidates on mobile device, viewing careers in the inbox, as I covered, also browsing careers on professional networks. And so you see that over half of the passive candidates that we surveyed, and almost 2/3 of our active candidates said, yeah, every month I'm going to different professional networks and online networks using my mobile device, and I'm looking around at careers. And then the fourth one on the side there is browsing on job board sites. Not surprising that active candidates are higher there. But again, lots of activity on that smaller screen as it pertains to looking at careers. What are they not doing so much of? Well, we saw a dip in numbers when we looked at the percentage that had actually applied to a job already, although quite interesting to see that almost a quarter of the passive candidates that we talked to had already applied to a job via mobile device, something we're thinking about. Uploading resume, again, slightly less popular. And then downloading a company app is the tail end of our survey results. And so one thing to think about is as you consider your resources and where are you going to invest when you come to your own strategy, creating your own app is probably not the best place to start unless you are a mega company that has the fortune to have lots of the right type of candidate coming to you proactively. As I mentioned, this survey took into account both smartphones and tablets, and we did see a difference in terms of how candidates and professionals think about those different devices. I think the major takeaway here, in fact, and let's just look at, let me just load this slide fully so we can talk about it in its entirety. So basically, the main point to make here is that tablets have enabled professionals to really explore careers in a different way. And so I've circled some of the things that we see going on in the top half there in purple, more on tablets. So career sites, for example, you see that those don't appear quite as frequently when we look at smartphones, because the screen really isn't enabled and isn't ideal for looking at a whole site on your phone, of course. But when we ask both active and passive candidates, what are they doing? Career sites and looking at career sites on a tablet actually ranks pretty highly on that list. One key difference between active and passive, as you might suspect, looking further down the slide at smartphones, is that job sites, with a job site being a bit more transactional, we see more active candidates going to a job site on their smartphone than we see on a tablet, or certainly among passive candidates. And then the other call out on the passive candidate side, at the top there, social and professional networks ranking very highly as a place that passive candidates go specifically to think about career opportunities or to browse or to come across them. Now, here's the problem. When we flip the tables and actually go to talk to talent acquisition leaders, so this is from our Global Recruiting Trends survey last year, and ask them for their opinions on mobile recruiting, unfortunately we get very different answers. So we asked these leaders, 3,000 plus of them, to tell us how they were thinking about different aspects of mobile recruiting. And as you can see here, almost half of them, 49%, agreed that mobile recruiting was not a top priority for their organization. A very hefty percentage said they didn't even know where to start. And you know, in 2014, this is a little bit frustrating and challenging to see. It's not as if mobile recruiting is something that people have just started talking about. Been going to these conferences on the topic for 3 or 4 years now, and it's interesting to see that teams are still struggling to get their arms around how to start. So the good news is we'll get to some tips in just a few moments that will hopefully give you some easy inroads into mobile recruiting. But nonetheless, almost a third of the audience said, yeah, we really don't know where to start. And you'll see as we go down the list, only 1 in 5 basically said that their current career site is optimized for mobile. The job posting's optimized, you know, an even smaller amount. Investment level's pretty low there at only 20% looking to invest in new tools. And, you know, I think right down there at the bottom, only 13 or 14%, 13% said that they were adequately investing in mobile recruiting today. So clearly a lot of opportunity, especially when you contrast it with the prior slide where, you know, a half to 2/3 of the candidate population is routinely using their mobile device to interact with careers. So to me it signals there's a pretty large disconnect between what candidates are looking for and the way that companies are currently prioritizing investment. And if you still think it doesn't matter, look at these quotes that we pulled from the same survey. And these were from professionals, both active and passive, commenting on how they were experiencing mobile career apply flows and how they were reacting to the way that companies were positioning career opportunities as accessed on mobile device. So top quote there, stopped applying if the technology isn't up to par, because it says something to that individual about that company's seriousness about technology. And that becomes a turnoff for that candidate. On the right of the screen there, uploading resume, in this case the system didn't take it, and this poor candidate had to hand deliver their resume to the business. The irony is just crushing. And then at the bottom there, just some frustration around accessing company websites rather through an iPad. Clearly Apple is a fairly dominant device in the marketplace today, and Flash is just not compatible. And so again, just some frustrations coming out from the candidate pool about the way that companies are facilitating or not their ability to interact with careers on mobile device. So what do we do about this? Well, we've created a 3-step process, if you will, for thinking about mobile recruiting. And we've done this in conjunction with some great partners and mobile advocates of ours, which I'll cover in a second. But really there are 3 ways that we encourage our clients to think about the mobile recruiting experience. And the key here is to think about the experience through the candidate's eyes. So first off, candidates and professionals start by learning about your organization. So we'll talk a little bit about how you can optimize there in some very easy ways to make sure that that's a good experience for them. Secondly, they apply, hopefully, and we'll talk about that too. And then last of all, there's an engagement period after that application comes in where you still have a chance to impress or completely let down your candidate. And as we've built out this recruiting three-pronged strategy that I'll walk through now, I wanted to just give a special shout out to three very important friends of ours who are clients, Phil from Starbucks, Brett from Prudential, and also Vildan from Abbott. And they're among many of the very progressive talent acquisition leaders that I see today really starting to get their arms around how can I really serve up the right candidate experience through mobile device. So you'll see inspiration from all three of them, if you will, woven into the materials that follow. So first off, before you dive into actually the strategy itself, I think it pays to understand your starting point. In other words, how do your prospects today interact with you, with your career site via mobile device? And then take a look at that versus the data that you can find from other organizations. So some key questions to ask yourself and to get answers from, and hopefully these are actually available through your IT team. So first of all, what percentage of your current traffic to your career site comes via mobile device? That should be very knowable for you. And the higher that number is, of course, the greater the case for investing in a mobile experience and for really prioritizing mobile recruiting. You can, of course, compare that number to the overall site traffic via mobile. So for instance, if your company site gets 20% of its traffic via mobile, but the careers page, careers section gets 25% or 30%, that signals that your candidates are even more interested in connecting with you through mobile devices. You can also look at conversion rates, and this is another one. So if you're trying to build the investment case and think about how do I convince my leaders that we really need to take mobile recruiting seriously, take a look at how the conversion rate works for professionals who come to your career site, browse jobs, and hopefully click that apply button. What does that conversion funnel look like versus folks who are coming to the site via mobile device? What rate are they converting? Chances are, if you haven't optimized your site for mobile device, that conversion rate is much, much lower, and that then becomes a pretty decent argument to take to your leaders, again, to convince them that it's worth thinking about mobile investment. Additionally, you can do some digging around to think about how discoverable your jobs are today via mobile search. And so that's something that you can easily just test out by going to the major search engines and digging around and seeing where your jobs show up, especially relative to your competitors. That can be a very strong motivator when leaders see that they're being outperformed by their peers. In the same vein, I guess I would say, how shareable are those jobs today via mobile? Is it easy for candidates and for folks on your team even to share those jobs via mobile device? And then lastly, as I said, how does everything that you're doing compare with what the competition are up to? Because again, that can be a fairly significant motivator. All right, so you've gotten a sense of where you are today in terms of the interest incoming from potential candidates to your site. You've benchmarked that against what others are doing. You're ready to probably start kicking off and thinking about the strategy itself. So one piece of advice that came in, and I think this was from Vildan, was the idea that you should start small. So especially with something like mobile recruiting strategy, it sounds big, it sounds gnarly, it sounds like something perhaps you probably haven't gone down that path before. And one secret of success from our leaders that we talked to was really thinking about being smart about starting small, not trying to accomplish everything at once, and figuring out who within your organization is really smart about mobile. Because if it's not somebody on your team, it may be somebody in your consumer marketing team, for instance, or on the IT team. The example here is McDonald's. So they have a great career site, and you can bet that instead of necessarily doing that all themselves, organizations like them, like Starbucks and so forth, have the right dialogue going with folks at their organization who have been on the leading edge when it comes to adopting mobile. So think about who that might be within your organization. Also, as you're embarking on creating a strategy for yourself, it's very important to have the right success metrics and key performance indicators in place. So just some examples, and this actually ties back to what we were saying earlier in regard to some of the benchmarking that you can do up front as you're setting the strategy. So first of all, how has mobile traffic to your career site grown? How has mobile traffic to your jobs grown? And how does that continue to grow as you move forward with a mobile recruitment strategy? Secondly, looking at that funnel. So, at the start, you should have taken the temperature in terms of what does the conversion rate look like for mobile device versus desktop. You can do the same again as you proceed, and the hope being that as you make it easier and easier for candidates to apply in a painless way on mobile, you should start to see that apply rate go up and the funnel look much, much healthier. Additionally, think about your how interaction compares across device type with your site, and that will give you a sense of whether it's more important to think from a tablet perspective, from a smartphone perspective, and to make sure that you're delivering an even experience across different types of device. And then lastly, and this is, I suppose, the holy grail in many respects in recruitment, is just understanding source of hire in a way that truly is meaningful. And so it's certainly worth thinking about upfront, how are you going to track success? How will you be able to follow candidates all the way from source, and that source being a mobile device or coming into one of your properties via mobile device, to hire, and then be able to say something meaningful and results-oriented back to your leadership? So never too early to start thinking about that. As I said, Vildan has been fairly instrumental in helping us think through this, and from her perspective, and she's done this very well, it comes back to what are your business priorities, what are your needs, and make sure that your mobile strategy reflects those. So, just stepping aside for a minute, we're talking about mobile recruitment strategy here, but really you should have an overall recruitment strategy, and mobile is just one separate channel or instance in which you serve up that strategy. All right. So as I said earlier, there are really three pillars that we think about the whole mobile strategy, and it's all from the candidate experience. So first off, candidates and professionals who aren't even candidates yet are trying to find out more about your organization through mobile device. And this was fairly clear from the consumer research, from the professional research that we shared earlier in the webinar. So on screen here, you see the top 5 things that candidates say they look for on your career site when accessing it through a mobile device. So not surprisingly, job openings, top dog there, but also just trying to understand more about the company's culture, its history. Benefits feels a little bit mundane there, but certainly between the culture, the history, and then employee profiles, even on a small screen, folks that are trying to find out more about your organization are really trying to get their arms around you and who you are as an organization. So keep that in mind as you're designing or thinking about what information you're going to serve up on your site. And then when it comes to actually optimizing your career site, just a few tips here from the pros. So first of all, if at all possible, use mobile responsive design. So that will mean that it doesn't matter what device your potential candidates are coming to your site through, they're going to see an experience that feels like it works for that device. It fits the form. Stay away from Flash. Unfortunately, we love Flash, but it doesn't work so well on certain mobile devices. So that will tend to bite you if you go there. Secondly, and we'll talk about this later when we talk about in-mails and emails as well, keep it short and sweet. So it's not as simple as taking your career site experience and just transplanting that to mobile responsive design. You really need to think through what's it possible and what's it feasible and desirable to share in terms of content on your site. You're going to want to streamline that down significantly by almost half if you can. So definitely there's a value to be put on making things as short and sweet as you possibly can. Third, make sure all of your links and your forms work on a mobile device. There is nothing more frustrating than going to a site that is mobile optimized and that leads you to places that are not. It's almost like they just didn't think through the whole process, and you really need to. So make sure that you pay some attention to that. And then include the 5 things that we've said a candidate wants to see, because that will really help you to pique their interest and give them the information that they need, hopefully, in order to say, sure, I'm going to dig deeper on this company and potentially apply. As far as optimizing jobs are concerned, it's more of the same, really. It's about the experience technologically, and I think Starbucks does a really nice job here of letting you search through their jobs in a very intuitive way. But it's also, again, about streamlining the information. So nobody wants to read a job description that is multiple screens long and full of requirements. Those are hard going enough on a bigger screen, to be honest. But if you bring that and transplant it over to a mobile device, your audience will probably fall asleep mid-read. So I'd advise you to think carefully about how do you serve up something that, again, is shorter, sweeter, gets to the point, and helps them really digest the opportunity at hand. Optimizing your in-mail and your email messages. So this is something that, as a content marketer, is near and dear to my heart. And we've taken countless writing for the web classes here at LinkedIn, and really writing for a small screen is another step in succinctness. So it's all about boiling it down as much as you can. So 5 rules I would share to help you be as clear a communicator as possible on mobile device. First off, keep it short and keep your sentences short. And so even this actually holds whether you're writing a blog post or anything else. The longer the sentence, as the reader is processing that in their mind, it's the more words that are in that sentence, the more chance you stand of just losing them mid-sentence. So do everything you can to keep the sentences relatively short. Secondly, keep your paragraphs short. So same thing as someone is scrolling down a page, if they come to a big chunk of text, especially on a mobile device, that can be a significant turn off. And so again, think about not only short sentences, but how do I combine no more than maybe 2 or 3 of those sentences into a paragraph, then allow some white space and go to my next paragraph if I even need one. Make sure, and this is back to sort of nuts and bolts of good recruiting, spell out why them. Make sure that your message isn't generic. Even though they don't have much of an attention span on that small device, they still need to feel that the opportunity that you're reaching out with regard to is relevant for them and that you've seen something in their profile that makes them the right fit. Fourth, include an obvious call to action. So this will be, and again, think back to, as I was saying, make sure any links that you have in there are actually working and functional on a mobile device, but make sure there's something clear for them to do as a next step, whether that's to respond to you and indicate their interest, whether it's to check out your career site or the profile of a hiring manager, whatever it happens to be, make sure there's a clear call to action there. And then, if I haven't said it enough already, make every word on that screen count because space is at a premium on a mobile device. So just some quick tips there on how to really, go back to the messages that you send out to candidates and review them with an eye toward mobile and think about what you might shorten or make more succinct in order to get your point across more effectively. The second pillar is around apply. So let's say that you've done everything right in terms of creating a mobile responsive career site, making sure that your messaging is succinct, boiling it down to the things that the candidates care about on your site, and then reaching out to them as well through your messaging in a way that really captures their imagination in a brief way. So let's say you convince them that they should actually click that apply button. What happens next? Well, here's the not so good news from a recruiting perspective. Again, back to our candidate and professional survey, we asked all respondents, whether passive or active candidates, why had they not applied to a job via mobile device? And if you recall, about 20 to 25% of them said they had actually applied to a job, and that was on the passive side, and it was higher on the active side. So those who hadn't applied, the number one answer was that they didn't have a resume on their device. Of course, many of them not looking, that's pretty legitimate. The third answer there, they wanted the ability to customize their resume in the moment, and that's just very, very difficult with a document on a mobile device. And so on. So, we go down the list. For those of you who aren't even convinced in the value of passive candidates, you need to know that over half of the active candidates that we talked to who hadn't applied said that the resume storage was the gating factor. So we know this is a sticking point, especially at larger organizations that have their protocol for hiring. But the question is, can you step back and think about what are the minimum requirements that you need in order to vet whether somebody is a serious contender for a role or not? And think about how you then bring that into your apply experience, because everything I said about the messaging within your in-mail or your email applies in spades when it comes to the application process, especially if you have any hope at all of getting a passive candidate to apply on mobile device. So thinking about optimizing that process, so if it's possible, and I realize that in some organizations this may not be the case, but do what you can to eliminate that requirement for an upfront resume and cover letter, just because so many people are nowhere near that stage yet of having those documents stored on their mobile device. And so it becomes a factor that makes them exit the process. Instead, you can allow candidates now through the wonders of technology to submit a complete social profile, whether that's LinkedIn or something else. We have, of course, apply with LinkedIn through mobile device, and it's actually really, really easy to navigate. And what's nice about it is that as a candidate is applying, there's an option for them to edit their profile on the fly. So for instance, if their experience isn't built out quite enough, if they'd like to add a little bit more color, they can do that very easily from their mobile device before they click submit. And so it's just a very easy process for a candidate, whether active or passive, to navigate. And again, with 15 million now plus LinkedIn members in the UK, it's certainly, we're seeing more and more people with the wherewithal to apply through LinkedIn. The third pillar that we talked about was engagement of your candidate. So let's say that application comes in and the candidate is now in your pipeline. They're in your pool of talent that you're considering for a job. This gives you a chance now to really engage with them and impress them and stay in touch with them and make sure that you use mobile to your advantage. So the first thing that you can do is communicate with candidates immediately, and even while you and they are on the go. So unfortunately, in this new sort of post-social mobile world, everybody is always on. I feel that myself intimately. So it's definitely a challenge, but it's also an opportunity for you to really stay top of mind with your candidates. Secondly, make sure that you communicate promptly with your hiring managers to make sure that they too are in the loop on any recs that are going on. And the beauty of mobile technology, of course, is that you can. So if you are at an offsite and step out for a few minutes, you can check back in with your hiring manager. You can message that candidate on the go. Similarly, they can also message you back. And so it does, as I said, extend the recruitment cycle to almost 24/7, but at least the technology is there to enable you to be prompt with your communication. Then there's the on-site experience. So let's say the candidate is somebody that you do want to bring into the organization. Think about how you're leveraging mobile technology to engage with them and also to make them have a positive impression of your organization. So a couple of things that our recruitment team here at LinkedIn does that I think are quite effective. First of all, our headquarters is based in Mountain View, California. The traffic in Silicon Valley is pretty legendary. It's terrible. And so for candidates who are on site on any given day, we will actually send them SMS text messages with traffic alerts so that they can see that, for example, if 101 is backed up, they should probably take 280, or that they might want to leave a little bit earlier if the traffic is looking gnarly. Secondly, something else that the recruitment team does is they present on-site interviews with an iPad that they loan them for the duration of their interview. And that iPad is preloaded. It's got employer branding videos on there. I think there's an interview with our CEO. We include their schedule, of course, for the day, and links to their interviewers' LinkedIn profiles, so that, especially in the case of passive candidates where in the early rounds you might not expect them to have done the full diligence, it's a way for them to get smart while they're waiting for their next interviewer to show up. It's also, frankly, a good way to camouflage the fact that if a hiring manager might be late for an interview, it gives them something to do that's relevant while they wait for that person to show up. Not that hiring managers are ever late, right? Right. Another thing to think about when we talk about engagement of candidates using mobile device, here's some interesting research on when candidates are interacting with career opportunities. So the pink line there is tablet, the grey line is smartphone, and we ask candidates to tell us when during the course of the day they were thinking about or accessing career-related opportunities and information. And so two different patterns you see there, of course, depending on device type. So if we take the smartphone first in grey, as you might expect, during the commute there's a little spike, at work it tends to go down, and then during breaks it goes up, and then it stays relatively high during the rest of the course of the day, dips off slightly over the weekend. But the main thing is while at work it dips, and while on the go, of course, it goes up. Now, tablets, on the other hand, the pink line, so we see what LinkedIn calls the coffee and couch phenomenon, where first thing in the morning at home before work, and then also after work on the way home, and even at the weekend as well, you see that there's really this spike in activity. And so it pays to think about that as you're plotting your outreach and communication to candidates. And so just a few stats here. Let me just load the page fully. So, the spikes for smartphones in two different places, and then also this tablet use, enormous spike at home over the weekend as well. So, speaking about when you're publishing things, just to segue into one example of that. So on LinkedIn, hopefully you have a company page. There are over 3.5 million company pages now on LinkedIn. And this is a free resource. It's a chance for you to basically position your company. And the good news is it's free, and also it's mobile optimized. So every company page on LinkedIn is mobile optimized already. And once you have that company page up and running, you can gather followers there, and you can push out what we call targeted status updates. So again, a free way to basically engage those folks that have said they want to follow you. And that's worth doing as a recruiting leader, because 71% of those who follow companies on LinkedIn say that they do so partly because they're interested in career opportunities at that company. So don't miss the opportunity to engage these followers who've already raised their hand and said, sure, yeah, your company is of interest to me. And the good news is that you can really target that population. So for instance, if you want to send a specific message to folks in Asia Pacific, or who are of a certain title level or function, then you can target that population with your update. So again, just going back one slide, think about don't necessarily restrict all of that activity to the 9 to 5 schedule, because it turns out there's quite a lot going on over the weekends, especially on tablets and on those commute hours. Outside of the 9 to 5 hour when you might be in front of your desktop, there's definitely lots of opportunity there. All right. So LinkedIn and mobile, what's going on with us and why is this of such interest to us? Well, mobile has become more and more key to LinkedIn's way of life and way of doing business. As of the end of last quarter, 41%, almost half, we were getting there, 41% of our unique monthly visitors were coming to LinkedIn through mobile apps. So clearly a ton of the traffic that visits LinkedIn on a monthly basis is coming through mobile device. So therefore, as you can imagine, we've taken mobile development very, very seriously, and we've optimized many, many different parts of our site now so that people are being served up a really good experience on mobile device. The good news for you as a talent acquisition leader or professional is that whatever presence you have on LinkedIn, whether it's as simple as the profiles of your teams, your jobs that you post on the site, and your company page, those are all going to be mobile optimized for you without you having to lift a finger. Second factoid here, 90 LinkedIn profiles viewed every second via mobile device. So again, going back to the profile, all the advice that you get about sprucing up your profile definitely holds true for the mobile audience as well. And the importance of a nice headshot, I think, becomes even more critical on that small screen where your audience is focusing in on who you are, what you're up to, and why they should think about responding to you. And then the third thing is, from a job viewing perspective, we see a lot of our monthly views of our jobs and the folks coming to our platform to view jobs on mobile device as well. And the interesting thing, and the good news, I think, from a TA perspective, is that many of the folks who come to us via mobile device to look at jobs specifically aren't looking at jobs on their desktop. So it's like a net new population of potential candidates for you, which is great news. So how does this all play out across the learn, apply, and engage? As I said, there were various different tools and technologies that we offer up. And as we've been developing those, we've made sure that we mobile optimize as we go. So for instance, in the learn phase, sponsored jobs and jobs are all mobile optimized. So for those who don't know, sponsored jobs basically allow you to invest a little bit extra in making your high profile jobs pop by incorporating them into the feed of news when somebody logs into LinkedIn on their homepage. And our sponsored jobs are all included in the feed of our members in a very targeted way. And so if you're trying to hire a senior software engineer, for example, and you sponsor that job, we will do our best to insert that into the news feed of targeted members so that there's a higher chance of them seeing your opportunity, potentially clicking, and then who knows, even applying. Mobile Work With Us ads. Work With Us ads are small ads that appear on your employees' profiles. So the number one activity on LinkedIn today is viewing other people's profiles. We've seen a lot of savvy organizations take advantage of that real estate on their employees' profiles. And the good news is, if you're doing that through Work With Us ads, they're already mobile optimized. So again, a nice win for those using that tool. Job posts themselves, when it comes to applying, we've done everything we can to help our clients to create a seamless and easy to walk through mobile apply experience through LinkedIn. So, in the learn phase, what we're doing is we're surfacing jobs to professionals, whether they're active or passive. When it comes to applying, obviously they've made the decision to cross over into being an active candidate. It's still really important to serve up a great experience to them, and I think our job posts do that. And then when it comes to engaging folks through in-mail messages, so in-mails allow you to reach out to anyone on our platform, whether you know them or not. And again, the onus is on you to get the messaging right, but the in-mail will show up in a very nice way on your recipient's small screen, basically. And then the last piece of the puzzle is Recruiter Mobile. And so I talked a little bit about the advantages and the perils, frankly, as well, but now the opportunities today to stay in touch with candidates, with hiring managers on the go. Those of you using LinkedIn Recruiter, we now have a full-blown mobile app and also a mobile web version, which enables you to take the core functionality from our flagship sourcing product and engagement pipelining product and put that in your pocket, basically, or on your tablet. So works out quite well for our clients. So ultimately, one of these days, if you think about across these three pillars, you hope to deliver up what Vildan describes here is this one device agnostic candidate journey. Whether somebody's coming to you on desktop, whether it's through smartphone, whether it's through tablet, you want them to have a continuous and consistent journey. And I think what Abbott has done and what Starbucks and Prudential have done as well is rather than thinking of mobile as a one-and-done investment, they've thought about it as part of their overall organic growth and organic strategy. So no longer are they saying, oh, and what are we going to do differently for mobile? They're thinking about mobile every step of the way. And every time they change something on their career site, for example, thinking about what that means from a mobile perspective. So think about those three pillars. You've got learn, you've got apply, you've got engage, and reflect on what your company does or doesn't do today to serve up a great experience to your candidates. As I've mentioned, the good news is a lot of it, if you partner with whether it's LinkedIn or any other of the major platforms, you're going to find out that much of what we do is already mobile optimized for you because mobile is so critical to sites like ours. And so the more you can leverage that technology, of course, the more you're actually building out a mobile presence without having to really lift a finger. So if this has been of any interest to you at all, I would encourage you to download our full mobile recruiting ebook, which we launched late last year. You see the link on screen here. And this is where we really picked the brains of Phil from Starbucks and Brett from Prudential, Bill Down from Abbott, and really talked a little bit more about what they're doing at their organizations to really build out and execute on a full-blown mobile recruiting strategy. Hopefully I've shared some things today that are low-hanging fruit, even for companies that don't have budget. So if you do nothing else, go away and take a look at the in-mails and the emails that you send and think about whether those are as succinct as they could be. Take a look at where you're posting jobs. What platforms are you using to post your jobs today? Make sure with your providers that those are mobile optimized. LinkedIn certainly is, and that delivers a ton of value to our clients. And think about other ways in which you can really engage with candidates on the go and make sure that when they do engage with you and interact with you, that you're doing all you can to position yourself as a mobile forward company, because that matters more and more to companies these days.